Hey there, thanks for clicking on this video. You can call me Kay, and this is Opinions Not Facts. This is a little thing I like to do where I just take a topic that's been on my mind and I rant to you guys about it, and I throw some artwork on the screen for you to enjoy, and you just listen and disagree with all the nonsense that I spew. Now for today, I am a day late and a dollar short. I know I haven't been uploading lately, but during the spring as school ends, it's been totally crazy, and so I'm really late to talk about the topic of the casting for Toph and some of the controversial things that the actress has said already. So during this video, I'm just going to break down my thoughts on it, talk about why I am not totally freaked out, but why I'm sort of cautiously watching the situation with some curiosity. During the video, you'll see me drawing on screen doing some fashion sketches. This is kind of a fun situation. I am getting ready for Ren Fair. Me and my buddy are avid costume sewers, people, seamstresses, whatever you want to call it. And every year we plan out really elaborate costumes. And we decided this year we wanted to see and kind of challenge ourselves to see if we could create the Avatar: The Last Airbender sort of clans and iconography, but in Tudor era dresses and suits for the guys who are going with us. So kind of a chaotic, elaborate attempt that we're going for, but it's been really fun to try and style the costumes. And it's kind of unique how quickly these sort of things come together and how much style is shared between the two pretty opposite sort of inspirations we're working with. So that's what you'll see me designing on the screen. And then lastly, I want to give a quick plug. If you love vintage clothing and you are into affordable vintage items, I have an eBay store that I'm trying to get more eyes on. And I would just appreciate it if you are curious, if you would follow the link in the description and take a look. It would mean the world to me. Let me know if you go and visit and if you see anything cool. Now, onto the meat and potatoes of this video. Let's talk about Maya Chek, I hope I'm saying her name right, who was recently announced as the casting for Toph. Now, if you haven't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, this video is going to make not a lot of sense, but basically, if you need a refresher, she is Aang's, not firebender, oh gosh, she is Aang's earthbending teacher, and she is a blind character who lives in a very aristocratic upbringing, but kind of rejects all that and runs away and becomes this really rough and tumble, tomboyish earthbender that joins the gang. Now, Toph is known for being a very boyish, kind of rough around the edges character, which is why it stirred up a lot of, I don't know if negative responses, but a little bit of indignance and curiosity when Maya, or Mia, I apologize out there to the actress, was quoted as saying, "My version of Toph is going to be a little older and slightly more feminine. I feel like I wanted to work into a very humanizing space for her because, you know, she was a cartoon." Now, I saw a wide range of responses from people being excited for this to people being absolutely indignant. So all across the board, and I didn't see a huge rousing response. And I'm kind of glad for that. I'm glad that it seems like things are a little bit more measured and calm. But I wanted to talk about my own thoughts of what I've heard. Now, right off the bat, hearing us talk about Toph being more feminine does make me a little bit uncomfortable. I have always struggled with Hollywood's interpretation of femininity because to me it is either insultingly shallow or insultingly masculine and kind of absent in characters. And I find that Hollywood thinks femininity is synonymous with sexuality, and I disagree. I think femininity is not the same thing as being a very sexual being. And I don't think it's as demeaning as Hollywood oftentimes likes to portray it. I don't know if they can create a very nuanced understanding of what it's like to be feminine or what it really means. And so it scares me that we're looking at maturing Toph, having her be older and more feminine. So my initial warning bells go off that we might be leaning towards sexualizing her, which makes me really uncomfy. I'm really hoping they don't go there, and that's sort of my worst case scenario, but it is something that immediately came to mind for me. The other thing that immediately comes to mind is this sort of initial kind of adverse reaction of what? Toph is not feminine. Why are we feminizing her? And after I had that initial reaction, I kind of stepped back and I thought it through a bit more. And it's not that Toph isn't feminine. In fact, Toph is actually fairly open to girlish things. But what we're shown time and again is that there's certain aspects of it that she doesn't like. She doesn't like how mean and competitive girliness is. She doesn't like how it constrains her and stops her from being able to function normally. In fact, we see that it often interferes with her ability to adapt to being blind because she's forced to wear shoes and be all dolled up and all these things. And so what we see is that Toph wants to make her own way. And the idea of rejecting beauty and rejecting some of the social constraints of what we see as femininity isn't necessarily equivalent to not being feminine. It's just about finding your own way and kind of just being you. It's the idea that you're not constrained to this binary of being feminine or masculine, but that you're just you and you just survive and you just do your own thing. And so for me, the idea of Toph not being feminine is not true. I think she is feminine in her own way. It's just a more rough and tumble and kind of youthful, tomboyish energy, and that's okay. And I think that also leaves her the opportunity to grow into a more mature kind of general femininity. Like maybe someday she grows up and she enjoys those things more and they add more value to her life, but for now she just wants to explore. She's been constrained into a very rigid femininity. Of course she's going to resist against that and kind of explore her own adventurous side. And I don't think that has to be unfeminine, so to speak. I don't know if I'm making any sense there. Now, on the whole, I actually really like the idea of actresses wanting their characters to be more feminine and letting their characters breathe from this really kind of stiff, almost exhausted idea of really masculine, powerful women. The idea is you can't have power and authority and command a room and be a gentler, softer person. And maybe that's just in my mind from what I've seen of media, but I really like the idea of actresses looking at their characters and wanting them to be feminine and seeing that as a source of pride and not like an insulting thing, the way we did in like the 2010s when girl boss energy was out the wazoo. So I found myself looking at Mia or Maya and thinking, this is great, but maybe directed at the wrong character. And that's kind of where I've landed is, this is great. I don't mind more feminine. I'm actually happy that she realizes that as a cartoon, there's things that you can play with Toph that don't translate into a live action, because I think that's been a bit of a struggle for Netflix, is realizing what they need to leave behind with the cartoon and what doesn't translate out of a cartoon into a live action, and what should change and what shouldn't. They really struggled there. And so I think for this actress to realize, I'm not playing exactly the cartoon, there's things that won't translate and I need to be able to kind of adapt, is a good thing. But I don't know, I'm just curious to see what happens. Now, there's a few things that do give me hope. The first one is that this was a response to a direct question that she was given, the actress, that prompted her to expose differences between her version of Toph and the cartoon. So she was directly asked, how is your version different? And that kind of guides the answer. I mean, for her to answer the question responsively, she has to identify a difference. And so that means she might be looking at subtle or slight differences, and in reality, she's trying to play the character very faithful to the cartoon. So that right there is a little bit of relaxation and confidence of like, okay, they wanted her to find a way to be different. That's what the interviewer was asking. And she's just responding to this question she was given. The other thing is that I don't necessarily think feminizing Toph would be the worst thing in the world if it was done well. And again, I'm scared Hollywood doesn't usually do this well. But I'm always open to someone giving it a shot, because I think there could be a lot of nuance to a conversation of how there's a lot of pressure with femininity to be beautiful, and how that would affect Toph when she can't see herself and enjoy beauty the way other people do. I think that could be really meaningful, and I think they barely sort of skimmed the surface of it with her character, and I think it'd be a cool thing to go into more, is how some of the idea of femininity as it relates to beauty would change depending on whether or not you can view and see yourself the way the rest of us can. And so I'd be interested if they pursued that route, and I don't necessarily think that feminizing Toph subtly or tastefully destroys the fact that she can be nitty-gritty and just a little bit absurdly kind of punchy for a character, both physically and metaphorically. And so I find myself not necessarily scared, definitely a little concerned, a little interested to see where things go, but I'm glad to see we're not losing all hope and panicking and pulling our hair out, and we're not treating this like it's the end of the world, because I don't know that it is, and I'm cautiously curious to see what's going to happen. So I'd love to hear your opinion down below. How do you feel? What do you think of the costume? Does it look not great? Would you be interested in if you saw this at a Ren Fest? Are you like, this is so boring, why'd you waste my time? And are you ready for school to be done as much as I am? So we'll see you guys around. Thanks. Bye.